Hello and a warm welcome to everyone. Myself Manish Prabhakar Singh, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Model College, Kharsawa, affiliated to Kolhan University, Chaibasa. Today's lecture will be on the poem Break, Break, Break by Alfred Tennyson. I would try to make it easier for you to understand all the imageries associated with sea and how it acts as a general metaphor on mortality and loss. But before delving deeper, let me first introduce you a little bit about Alfred Lord Tennyson. Alfred Tennyson was a British poet who became Poet Laureate in 1850 after the demise of William Wordsworth. He remains one of the most popular British poets and received Chancellor's Gold Medal at Cambridge for one of his first pieces, Timbuktu. If we look at his poetries, he used a wide range of subject matter, ranging from medieval legends to classical myths to the observation of nature. His poems reflects the Victorian period of his maturity in his feeling for order and his tendency towards moralizing. He composed many famous poems like Break, 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 The Change of the Light Brigade, Crossing the Bar, etc. Though a celebrated and a famous poet of his time, Ifor Evans writes about him. He had in many ways been representative of his age and, like Kipling, had to suffer when society took to new traditions. Coming to the poem, Break 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 was a poem written during early 1835 and published in 1842 in his second book of poetry collection, simply called Poems. It is a lyrical elegy which describes Tennyson's feeling of loss after the demise of Arthur Henry Hallam and his feelings of isolation while at Mablethorpe, Lincolnshire. Though the subject of Tennyson's poem was quite varied, this particular poem is quite similar to Tennyson's In Memoriam, as both the poem connects with the suffering and his longing for his friend Hallam. The poem has been written in irregular tetrameter, with the rhyme scheme being simple, with the second line rhyming with the fourth line in every stanza. One point to remember is that Tennyson used a variety of styles such as exact understanding of meter, which was second to none. With the use of irregular tetrameter, Tennyson is able to present the sad and nostalgic tone which is present throughout the poem. By using an irregular rhythm, he is able to present the breaking in the rhythm the same as the title of the poem. Before moving further, I would like you to go through the poem first so that you can form your own ideas and get a grasp what the poem is all about. Okay, now if you have done that, let us delve deeper to understand the overall context in the poem. If you look at the very first line of the poem and the overall language used in the poem, you can easily understand the negative tone present throughout it. He starts with using the word break three times in a repetitive manner. He uses the refrain, and in the second line, look at the adjectives used cold and grey. By using these particular adjectives, Tennyson creates a sad and nostalgic setting. These words talk about the rocks on which the waves are breaking. Breaking itself presents a negative image, and by repetitively using, Tennyson creates an image of loss and grief. Look at the vowel sound O in the second line. Just remember it, we will again talk in the later part about it. While watching the waves breaking, he yearns for the ability to express all the troubling thoughts that are going within him. I would like you to note the word would. When we will reach the end, I will once again talk about that. The second quatrain once again starts with the vowel sound O. He watches a fisherman's son playing with his sister. He also sees a sailor lad who is singing while sailing through the sea. Just look at the word boy lad. It represents the image of youth. Now look at the word O once again. Here, the vowel sound O clearly represents the sigh, and all those innocence or naivety is not enjoyed by the poet. It is like he is distancing himself from all those cheerful people and he is not able to resonate with their happiness, as according to him, he does not have any reason to be happy. But you can also say that by talking about youth and their happiness, he is like pointing out those that fatalities which would also be there in their future. Now look at the beginning of the third quatrain. Here, Tennyson alludes to that by using the image of the ship. Remember that his friend Hallam died abroad, and at that time, ship was the only medium of transport from long destination. So the ship symbolizes or acts as the metaphor of life, which has now reached its destination and has gone out of sight. The use of under the hill refers to the process of burial, that is the resting place. But the third line now for the first time mentions a vanished hand. If you look at the poem from very beginning, Tennyson had made no such reference about his friend, but by referring to hand and the touch, he is now referring to his deceased friend. Here Tennyson has brilliantly used Synecdoche, a figure of speech. In the next line he mentions the sound of a voice that has become still. In the third line, look at the word O again. It once again acts as a sigh and presents a sad mood. But you should also remember that hand is a nautical term, and so Tennyson does not make it explicitly clear that whether he is talking about his friend Hallam or he is letting the readers to infer the meaning according to their own reading. The fourth stanza once again starts with the refrain break, break, break. The word is repeated thrice and it looks like that waves are beating the cliffs repeatedly. But that's where you can admire the genius of Tennyson and the use of sound symbolism. If you look at the very first stanza, it starts with the refrain which is absent in next two but once again present in the last stanza. And Tennyson brilliantly portrays the image of grief and sadness which is not seen in second and third as it draws a carefree image of children and the ships. So the waves are once again breaking on the craggy cliffs. It comes again and again, hitting a wall of rock, but the recurring themes just bring back the feeling of loss. By using the phrase OC, he's trying to point out that both C and himself do not have a choice and they are in the time of hopelessness. The last line is very important as he realizes there is no way to get the dead back. Now look at the word will in the last line, and if you remember the word would in the very first stanza. If you compare both of the words, would suggest that the narrator might be able to utter the thoughts, but the word will in the last line clearly implies that the death is final and there is no returning. In a way, Tennyson makes the poem reach its sad finality, and it looks like a sad and nostalgic feeling for his friend who has passed away and their friendship which is no more. Just remember that the title of the poem is very important as it has been used as a refrain and by repeating the word thrice sorry with no variation emphasizes the breaking down. It's like he is reinforcing the sense of paralysis as he is not able to move on and he needs to break away from all those particular emotions as he will always be in the dreaded loop of sadness in the circle of time. Coming to the theme of the poem, one of the most important theme is death. Death has been presented as an idea throughout the poem. The title itself makes us infer the negative tone, and as we know, Tennyson was writing the poem at the loss of his closest friend, Arthur Henry Hallam. Tennyson brilliantly depicts the journey of life to death. Another important aspect is the fleeting nature and coming to terms with the state of loss. Tennyson is mourning the death of his friend and is trying to accept the fact that he would never return. The feeling of loss could be felt everywhere as life feels or acts like a fleeting and enforces an idea that whatever breaks can't be mended once again. The poem present throughout the sense of loss as even the young children will lose their youth and even the sailor would someday become an old man. So everything fades and vanishes in the passage of time and it becomes very difficult to accept the reality of loss. When a person is feeling a sense of loss and is full of grief, he is not able to embrace happiness and is not able to relate himself with life. You can look at the second and third stanza. Tennyson presents a childlike and a carefree approach, but it juxtaposes as Tennyson's sorrow becomes too much deeper. It is very easy to understand. You can relate it with yourself. When you are sad or in a very negative mood, you love listening to sad music, and even a glimpse of happiness irritates you. Look at the very first stanza. It presents a bleak setting and, more importantly, focuses on Tennyson's inability to utter, which showcases that he is not able to move on from his grief. If we talk about the symbols in the poem, C is one of the most important symbols as it represents the impermanence of life. It embodies the idea of waves crashing repeatedly against the craggy cliffs, emphasizing that everything comes to an end. The sea carries both life and death, and it focuses on the idea of existence, which is always present. The cold grey stone symbolizes the bleakness of life and death, which is always the end of a journey. I hope I was able to bring out the core context of the poem and make you understand the imageries used as well as the way sound has been used in this poem and make it easier for you to understand it. If you have any questions, you can comment and I would answer it for you. Thank you for listening.